Okay, welcome to part 2 of episode 16 of the dog walk. My apologies, I stopped the recording as opposed to pausing it. So here we are with a part 2 as opposed to a continuation of the previous video. Where I left off, I was explaining how in the animal world, the way we measure intelligence is that it's proportional to not just the total quantity of neurons, of brain cells that you have in your brain, but also of the total quantity of connections between those neurons, which is why the smooth brain is an insult. That makes sense. So that works in the animal kingdom because just a dog's brain works the exact same way as ours. It's dependent on neurons that talk to each other through electrical impulses, which are generated by each neuron and then carried over to the neurons to which they are connected by chemical reactions. At the end of each neuron, I'm sure you've seen a picture of a neuron in a biology textbook or something like that. If not, Google is your friend, but you'll see it's very long and there's a bunch of connections. Well, at the end of each one of those connections, there's the potential to grow a certain number of ion channels. What that means is, imagine you've got a highway or a street, and you can either expand that street and add more lanes because there's a whole bunch of traffic all the time and you want that traffic to go through, or if it's not very well used road, you'll prune off, or you'll stop maintaining those roads. You'll remove lanes. You'll stop paving it so that it becomes a gravel road, eventually a dirt path, and eventually, if you really don't use it, it just will turn back to nature, right? So that's exactly how our brains work, and that's how we learn. Whenever you do something or think about something, that pathway in your brain gets reinforced. Sorry, I need to just untangle the leashes for a second. There you go. Okay. And that's why, for example, addiction is so difficult to get rid of. It's because you're constantly reinforcing those pathways in your brain, and at a certain point, it becomes a dependence that you just can't shake, right? So that's how our brain operates. That's how our brain, that's how we learn. That's how we lose skills over time. That's how we forget memories, right? If we don't access them in long enough, eventually the memory will fade. Now, there's also memory modification through access, but that's a whole different ball game that I don't want to get into right now. The point, and I said I wouldn't come this way. Mista, sorry, I forgot. This way is way too flooded for Daisy. Mista, come this way. Let's go, girls. We're going this way. So, come on. Go. Mista. Sorry about that. So that's how it works for, like I was saying, a dog, just like how it works for you. Our brain is not more special than a chimpanzee's or a dolphin's. It just has a few more connections, and we are able to use those connections to do stuff like go to the moon and develop quantum physics. Now, that works in the biological system, but why I keep insisting on that, and what I'm trying to get to, is that that's why we never talk about time or speed, because or not never, but we don't talk about the speed at which those reactions occur. Sorry, that's a point I forgot to mention. At the end of each connection there, how that lane highway gets reinforced or pruned and all that. It's there's a the neurons don't actually touch each other, right? There's a little gap, and in that gap is where there happens a chemical reaction which is triggered whenever a neuron fires. So the neuron or the brain cell will be activated, and it'll send out an electrical signal, and then at each one of the ends of each one of its connections, that electrical signal will release a certain number of chemicals based on how many lanes you built at the end of that connection there. Those chemicals then can get picked up on the other side of the connection, on the other side of the bridge of the gap, for those who tried to follow yesterday, by the receptors in the other neuron. And if the number of chemicals released is high enough that it goes above the threshold required for the receptors in the second neuron to activate, then that neuron will be triggered, and it will create an electrical impulse, which will itself be pushed to all the connections of that second neuron to all the other neurons to which it's connected, and etc., 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 up until whatever point where the signal doesn't reach the threshold. So imagine it's the same as kind of a light switch, right? Like you can move the light switch up or down a little bit and nothing happens. But whenever you reach the trigger, or I say a light switch, you can imagine, a gun trigger, which you can squeeze a little bit, but, nothing happens. And it's just whenever you reach that click, right? Then, it all works and it all goes, right? So, but if you put not enough pressure to reach that click, nothing happens. So it's a 1 and a 0, which might kind of sound familiar to what someone who understands how computer works, right? All our computers are built on binary, on 1s and 0s. Oh yeah, I forgot there's blood or something on the street here. I don't want the girls. Well, it's probably washed out by now, but the girls clearly still smell it. So, yeah, all of that happens at chemical speed, right? For all biological beings. Now I can get to the point which I was making, which is if you go out of the biological mindset, you'll realize that you can do the same thing, as I just mentioned, with transistors, right? They're 1s and 0s, right? And you can put resistances. Sorry, let me think about how I want to. Yeah, I'll go the other way first. So, all of let's say that we've got a human brain and it's got 10 billion neurons, each with 100 connections. So that's a trillion different potential capacity, and the chemicals reaction speed is 1 per second. Let's say that's not it, but I'm just using random numbers to try to illustrate the point. So that means that you'll be able to run a trillion operations, in air quotes, per second. Well, if you're a computer and you want to reach that kind of, or if you want to increase the performance, I'll say it the same way as I did last time. If you want to increase the performance, you can either get more neurons and more connections, or you can increase the speed at which the reactions happen, right? If your chemical reactions would happen twice as fast, well, then you could run twice as much information through the system, right? So that is true in the same way for computers that we build with transistors, right? They are logic gates with ones and zeros that have, there's a certain number of them that run at a certain speed, right? That's what your processor speed, that's what it means, right? So the big difference is that we are far, despite Moore's law, we are far away from being able to make a computer, at least available to the public, that has even remotely close to orders of magnitude within the amount of neurons that you have in your brain, right? But computers run at a clock speed, because they run at pure electricity. They run at a clock speed that is orders of magnitude higher than the speed at which the chemical reactions happen in your brain. So what that effectively means is that maybe not right now, not yet, but very, very soon, it's splitting. It's 1.5 to a dozen, right? You can have a system, to use very smaller numbers to illustrate my point, right? The human brain will have 10 connections and runs 1 operation per second. Well, that's the same as the computer that will have 1 connection but run 10 operations on it per second. The same capacity exists in both of those systems. So that's why I believe that, or I know that, computer capability will very soon outpace human complexity in capacity, and therefore intelligence and thought. But you'll say, wait a minute, that's, ones and zeros still doesn't describe that other part of what you said earlier, which is how we learn, right? By changing, by building more lanes or less lanes, and reinforcing and stuff like that, right? That's how we biological systems learn. You've said nothing about that related to computers. Well, that's where you're right in traditional computers, but neural nets are different. Whether it is through actual physical resistors, like I built when I was an undergrad 19 years ago, or through simulated resistances that you can use in the that you can set in a programming structure. The point is that you can recreate those that capability to increase or decrease the number of lanes on each connection, because all it is, it's a resistance, right? And that resistance is something that you can simulate, right? If we can simulate, shots to the moon and all those water effects, like I'm sure to try to connect to non-computer folks, right? Like you artists there who do VFX, right? How complex are the particulates and all that when you're trying to do water effects, and how much simulation time does that need, right? That is hugely complex. Well, it's very easy to do the same thing for neural networks, and that's exactly what scientists have been doing for several decades now. As I said, they've done it with biological cells that they put onto a silicon substrate. They've done it with transistors that were connected to actual resistors that could be where the resistance could be increased or decreased, and they've done it all fully simulated. So all of that exists and has existed for a while, and we can use that to create systems of neurons that learn exactly the same way as we do. I hope that I've explained that a little bit more clearly this time around. But like, because it's such a complex thing, and I find it very disheartening when I read or see the comments like on Aspen Gold's video there, where people are saying, what I am doing is so different because I can innovate as a human, and I can do these things, whereas the current tool that I currently use, all it can do is rehash images that were fed to it and combine them into something, right? I'm sorry, bro, but if you with your education, you probably don't even understand basic electrical systems or even plumbing or something like that. How can you hope to claim that you understand how neural networks and artificial intelligence actually works under the hood, right? You can't at all. It's so presumptuous, or Mista, what the hell? That's a car. Why are you running at the car? Yeah. So I'm how arrogant can you be? Anyway, if you, and I don't want to say that plumbing is not a good trade or this or that. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying that I'm pretty sure that understanding plumbing is a lot less complex than understanding neural networks. So anyway, these people who have no idea of how things work under the hood, either for neural networks or how their own brain works, who then claim that what they are doing is different. It is not. There's so much literature, and I know I haven't kind of backed up or fully illustrated all of the points I'm trying to make, but it's just do a bit of research. And I know telling someone in the internet to do research is futile, but if you're not going to do the research, well, believe me, I guess. Take evolution, right? How the new species come about, right? It's not because something different happened in the code. And sorry, I'm going to link this back to intelligence and innovation in a second there, right? It's pure chance, pure randomness that eventually something changes that will, create a new species, basically, give a new advantage or whatever, and it's something that's now brand new, right? Well, the same can be said, I believe, for new ideas, right? What made Mistra, we're going home, we're going this way. I don't know what's going on today. They're both trying to walk behind me for some reason. Usually Mistra is well ahead of me. Anyway, Mistra, we're going home. Go, go, go. I really don't know what's going on. Anyway, so yeah, the Van Gogh who came up with the Picasso who came up with I forget, how am I forgetting the name of the style, but anyway, let's say the Newton who comes up with gravity, or the Einstein who comes up with relativity. The new idea that sparks is just one random example after so many billions of humans, rehashing, imitating, rehashing, combining, etc., a whole bunch of ideas that people would say that's what AI is doing. I would say that's the same thing as most artists are doing right now. How many artists are actually creating a new style, right? Everyone's doing maybe a new image, but in a style that already exists, right? And then comes along a Picasso who breaks a mold, a Newton who comes up with a new theory. Well, that's the same thing as evolution, right? There's a whole bunch of reproduction that happens, and tiny changes accumulate, recombine, etc., meld over time, and all of a sudden, poof, you reach a threshold, something happens, and randomly, poof, you are now, you've got the new species, or you've got the new idea that came out. So, how everyone has learned from the beginning of their life is by watching and imitating, right? That's exactly what AI is currently doing. And as AI and computer systems get more and more transistor and become more and more complex and do more and more iterations, it's not going to be long before AI surpasses us and does the exact same thing as we do. You have to be ready for it. Like, it's not just the burger flipper jobs that are going to disappear. It's like creating new stuff, or being a creator is also going to disappear, or could disappear, because AI, or not necessarily disappear, but AI can do it as well as we can, or will be able to do it soon. Every job. Anyway, I feel like I'm repeating myself, talking in circles. It's not because it doesn't happen now that it's not going to happen tomorrow. Think about it. 10 years ago, how many people were talking about generative AI? 20 years ago, how many people even knew the word AI, right? Look at technology, how it keeps progressing and progressing. So please don't take what's happening today as being the eternal truth, because the truth of the matter is computers will soon be functioning and learning in the exact same way as you do, and soon will be much smarter than you at whatever it is that you do. So on that note, have a good evening, and until next time.